Every year at this Novena, we have an overarching theme that I suppose guides us through the 9 days. This year is no different. This year we're not only celebrating the Year of Faith, but we're also celebrating 50 years since Vatican II. Now, if you're like me, you weren't alive when Vatican II took place, and you might be wondering what is or what was Vatican II. And all it was a series of meetings that took place around the 1960s, in the middle of the 60s. And these meetings and these talks brought about certain changes in the Catholic Church. And some of those changes will be mentioned to you at this Novena. And one of the famous documents that emerged was the Church in the Modern World. The Church in dialogue with the modern world. So that's all you need to know about that. Vatican II as a series of meetings that took place in the 1960s. At this moment in time, this particular juncture in our lives as Irish Catholics, it's difficult at the moment to listen to all of the despairing news stories about our world and about our church. There is a tangible despair in our society. Because I know from looking at my own family and my friends and my neighbours that there are people struggling to live and survive on social welfare payments. There are people living out their faith and teachings of the Church, while at the same time the dignity and the respect for human life is under attack. There are priests in this country who know that once a child makes their first Holy Communion, and that's the last time they'll see that child until their confirmation day. And on this Mental Health Week, there is a particular part of this country where the incidence of suicide have gone up by 400% in the first quarter of this year. So listen to what St. Luke's Gospel has to say to our situation, our church, and our world at this time. Do not be afraid. Don't despair. Continue to cast your nets out into the deep. Keep going, keep praying, no matter what. And the disciples were under no illusion as they got off that boat and set foot on dry land. They were under no illusion that the world in which they lived was a world that would challenge and even rock their faith. It was once the case where the Catholic Church dominated the world. It directed national governments and it even directed legislation. And of course this wasn't healthy. But now we have something totally reverse happening. The world is now trying to dominate and control the Church by telling us what rules need to be changed, what structures need to be renewed. And that's not healthy either. If the world had its way, we would have the direct and intentional ending of the lives of unborn babies on this island without restrictions. And already we see that anti-abortion campaigners are struggling to have their voices heard in the Irish Parliament. If the world had its way, the teachings of our religion would be abolished for an easier, a more manageable and perhaps a nicer version of faith. So yes, the Church is under pressure from the world and we are being challenged. But when we look back, for example, at the recent abortion debate in this country, there's something not quite right about sending the Taoiseach of Ireland death threats and letters written in blood. And I don't know who would have done such a thing, but that's certainly not the Catholic way. And why can I stand up here on the first day of the Dundalk Novena and say that's not the Catholic way? Well, if I turn the clock back to those series of meetings that I told you about, Vatican II in the 1960s, those series of meetings called us as believers to enter into dialogue with the world. not to set ourselves up as an elite force against it, but to talk to the world about our faith and our teachings respectfully and without apology. And while this power struggle between the world and the church will always be around us, the challenge as a Catholic is to stand confidently in the face of the world and say, we're not for moving on these issues. However, and this is important, did you ever notice that within this power struggle between the world and the church, the faith and the struggles of the people of God get little or no attention? Because at this moment in the church's life, we're arguing with the world, we're arguing amongst ourselves, we're critiquing every gesture and statement that comes out from the Vatican. But when was the last time someone said to you, how are you coping? How's life for you at the moment? How's your prayer life? Are you finding strength in God? Is the church helping you? And I ask these questions because there's a shadow hanging over this country after the alleged rape of 2 young children in Athlone last Saturday week. And there's a shadow hanging over Europe after the deaths of over 300 African migrants off the coast of Lampedusa. And there may very well be a shadow hanging over your own life here today. And that's why we have gathered at the St. Gerard Novena. We have gathered because we need to be here. We are here to talk to God and to be beside one another. And you have no idea how your presence at this novena is helping the person sitting beside you. Because the nature of our church is, I get strength from you, and with a bit of luck, you get strength from me. And as St. Luke says, we continue as a body of believers to cast our nets out into the deep well of God's love, despite everything. And that's the church in the modern world.